here. You're actually on my back porch, so welcome. Dig this place. There's chickens to my right, bunnies to my left, my neighborhood back behind me. Anyways, wanted to share some thoughts with you guys as you head into your week this Monday, and I hope you're doing well. I hope you're getting used to this thing still, and one of the things we talked about on MSM Sunday, if you got to catch it, was this idea of it's important for us to find ways to show each other that we're still together, even when we're apart. And the thing that's so profound about that is we were created for it. There's this story about John McCain, and John McCain, if you don't know him, he was the senator for Arizona. He died recently, but he's a Vietnam veteran, and during his time in Vietnam, he actually got shot down as he was flying over on a mission, and he became a prisoner of war. And during his time as a prisoner of war, he spent 2 years in solitary confinement. And solitary confinement is one of these things that is actually, though it does not seem physically torturous, is one of the most torturous things you can actually do to a human being. And he writes about his time, and he says this: "I remained in solitary confinement from that time for more than 2 years. As far as the business of solitary confinement goes, the most important thing for survival is communication with someone, even if it's only a wave or a wink, a tap on the wall, or to have a guy put his thumb up. It makes all the difference." And he talks about this idea that he remembers all 363 names of the different prisoners of war that were with him in Vietnam. And he remembers the tapping code and what that meant, or different numbers that they developed, and he remembers all these unique things. But it's because communication, knowing that there was other people with you, which is what communication taught you, you might see Miley come in here, is so vital to us. The writer of Genesis, the very first book that you find in the Bible, in chapter 2, illustrates and kind of unpacks God's creation of man. And there's this moment where God actually points out something in his creation that's not so good. And it's the fact that Adam's alone. And he says this: it's not good for man to be alone. So he makes him a partner. And this partner he called bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. And it was this beautiful picture, though, that God never intended human beings to feel alone. That it was never something that he desired. And actually, when you think about this idea of social isolation, maybe some of you have found yourself sad, anxious, depressed, missing people. And the reality is these stay-at-home orders are almost a recipe for a hard month for some of us. But there's something that we can do to find courage in these times, to find energy in these times, to know that even though we may just be with our family and we miss our friends, that the people that we love and miss, that we're still together even when we're apart. The writer Paul the Apostle, who wrote tons of the New Testament, majority of the books that he wrote were actually letters. We call them books, but they're letters to these groups of people that he wasn't with. He wasn't with them at the time, and so he wrote letters because he wanted them to know that their mission of sharing the gospel and love of Jesus, that living a life connected to God, was something that they were together in. And so he wrote letters to churches, to cities, but to individual people. And he wrote a letter to this boy named Timothy. And in that letter, he writes this idea, and he says to him, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear or timidity, but he's given us a spirit of love and power and self-control." And the reason I think that's so profound is he goes on to encourage him to continue engaging in life, and the motivation that he uses to do that is the fact that they have the same spirit, that they share this spirit together. And it got me thinking about this idea that what the spirit that we all share, God's spirit that's within all of us, that's in his creation, but it's in our hearts and it's in our souls, it's in your heart, it's in your soul, that this spirit does profound things to help bind us together. I remember going through a really, really hard time this last year,
and just finding myself really frustrated, and Courtney, my wife, and I having a conversation that I just couldn't sort it out, and so I went on a drive, but then I got this text from a friend, and I pulled into a parking lot, and I read the text, and it just said, "Hey man, you're just on my mind, and I was thinking about you, wanted to check in." He had no idea what I was going through. I hadn't talked to him about any of this, but for some reason, something spurred him to reach out, to tell me that hey, I'm with you, and you're my friend, and I want to be there for you if you need me, and you're on my mind. And I called him, and it was profound, and it made me feel so with him, and it made me feel like people supported me, like there was community around me. And I want to ask you right now, who are you thinking about? Who's someone that you're missing? Who's someone that's on your mind? And what would it be like for them to receive a text from you? Or what if simply you just sent a little note or a mail, or you gave them a phone call, or you asked them to Zoom, simply because you wanted them to know that you were thinking about them and that you're with them? I think if all of us took a moment this week to do that, we might find ourselves, yeah, apart, but feeling a little bit more together. So, have an awesome week, and hopefully see you guys really soon.